Daven is a warrior of the Samian family, a legendary martial arts clan, born with only a left arm. Throughout his life, he was scorned and ridiculed, but still rose to become a genius, surpassing even the direct descendants. However, the glory did not last. His family parents all betrayed him. Daven's ending was extremely tragic, and he was branded as a demon. But 500 years later, when the truths had long been buried, Daven was reborn into a new body, a body more perfect and powerful than ever. Now he has both arms carrying memories and experiences from his previous life, along with the help of the god Julian. How dramatic and captivating will his journey to the top and to uncover all the buried secrets be? Of his will be dramatic and captivating. Please everyone follow along. The story begins on a cold, rainy night, in a luxurious and vast mansion, seemingly the residence of a powerful family. Heavy raindrops poured down relentlessly, like a waterfall. Inside a room within that mansion, a cradle swayed gently to a rhythm. The child lying inside was still fast asleep. In front of the cradle a man stood silently. He wore an elegant white suit, but his eyes, when looking at the child, held no affection whatsoever, no love, and no joy. The child continued to sleep peacefully. Truly a disgusting thing, his cold and contemptuous voice rang out on the day I was born. Father looked at me and uttered those words. The greatest misfortune in my life was being born on the same day and month as Kajin. It seems this is a memory fragment of the child, an unfortunate child, abandoned by his own family. Kajin was a child blessed by the sword god, Kesa, possessing both outstanding appearance and innate talent. My mother held me in her arms, her eyes filled with disappointment. How wonderful it would have been if you were Kajin, but she was no different from my father, as if my birth was an insult to them. How wonderful it would have been if you were Kajin, but she was no different from my father, as if my birth was an insult to them. Because of that, every night, Mother would hold me close, whispering in my ear, "Why don't you just disappear, my child?" The child still innocently smiled, thinking he was not old enough to understand those harsh words, but deep inside his heart, he just wanted to whisper, "Mother, I am sorry, but I really don't want to die." I overheard the words Father spoke when I was still in Mother's womb. In the time before I was born, my parents had placed so much hope in me, the child destined to shoulder their future. This child is our hope. The father's face appeared full of anger, his eyes gleaming with intense jealousy. He gritted his teeth and growled. Throughout my entire life, I have always been inferior to and unable to compare with my older brother. But my son, he might surpass his son. No, he definitely will shine brighter than his son. Father had hoped I could be more outstanding than Kajin, but from the moment I cried my first cry, I only had one arm. Moreover, I didn't receive any blessing from the gods. That was what made me a disgrace, a stone crushing all of my parents' last hopes. I was such a person. The scene immediately shifted to a flower garden inside the mansion. There, 3 maids were playing happily with a child in the distance. A woman quietly observed a radiant smile on her lips. It seemed she was the child's mother. "Young Master Kajin, come here." Another person also opened their arms wide. "Come here, you adorable young Master Kajin." Small face brightened up when he saw someone playing with him. The boy gave a pure smile. Seeing this, the maids immediately vied to flatter him. Oh my, when the young master smiles, he looks just like an angel. Behind a tree, Daven's mother, that unfortunate child's mother, quietly watched. Her eyes are fixed on Kajin, full of jealousy. Kajin can already walk. She looked over at her son Daven, the boy still lying on the ground, and that child? Why is he so slow? Just as I had begun to wobble and walk, Daven quickly moved forward, step by step, silently passing by his mother. He always yearned to receive praise and recognition from his mother, yet what he receives in return was only a reproachful tone. Kajin can already hold a sword, and you can only walk. What meaning does that have? When I could wield a sword as usual, I exerted all my strength to show my efforts in front of my mother, but in response, I only heard harsh words of comparison. Kajin has already mastered mana and is practicing swordsmanship with the Samian swordmaster. Oh heavens, if only my son were Kajin. Those cold turnings of her back, those careless words, how much they hurt Daven. And so Kajin became someone I both envied and admired. One freezing winter day, snow fell covering the entire forest. In white, the biting cold winds ceaselessly blew through, making the atmosphere even more desolate. Under the snow-covered road, a horse-drawn carriage silently rolled forward. That year I had just turned 7 years old. I was taken to be an attendant for Kajin. Outwardly, I was known as his capable assistant, standing shoulder to shoulder with him as a cousin, but in reality my parents had sold me for the price of 300,000 len. From the time I started serving Kajin, he treated tormenting me as a form of amusement. "Ha ha ha, Daven! Look at your appearance!" Kajin tied me to the base of a tree, leaving my upper body bare in the freezing winter air in front of him. He stood there, his face not showing any emotion, as if I were not his relative. Kajin swung the whip, lashing it strongly across my back. Each whip strike tore through the air, leaving stinging welts on my flesh. He laughed with delight. "This is the first time I've seen someone as pathetic as you, Daven. From the very beginning, Kajin disliked me, so he always saw me as a target to vent his anger. Seeing me writhing in pain, his eyes still didn't have a trace of sympathy. His whip strikes grew stronger and stronger, continuously lashing down without hesitation. He sneered, "Cry, cry," louder for me to see. I could only grit my teeth and endure. I wouldn't allow myself to shed tears. No matter how much the pain tormented me, what made me even more despairing were the people standing around those elders. Even though they witnessed everything, still turned a blind eye with indifference. I used to think that no one knew about Kajin tormenting me. But it turned out that not only did they know, but they also stood there coldly observing, as if enjoying a form of entertainment. At that moment I understood that those people were not worthy of my respect. The torture lasted for many hours. The snow still fell silently, covering the entire sky in white, creating a cold and tragic scene. Our uncle, a remarkably brilliant man, had left the family long ago and had never returned. Therefore, in this place no one could control Kajin. He grew up with a cruelty that went beyond limits, no different from a madman. In the training yard, Kajin relentlessly attacked the young man in front of him, too fast. Hearing that, he sneered contemptuously, "It's just that you are too slow." Kajin swung the wooden sword, each strike powerful and sharp like a storm. Indeed, the rumors of him being blessed by the sword god were not unfounded. In just a blink of an eye, a precise slash split his opponent's wooden sword in two. The young man he was fighting realized he had no chance of winning and immediately knelt down, begging, "I admit defeat, please spare me." For Daven, Kajin's innate talent and the sword god's blessing were like a poison, slowly destroying his life bit by bit. Kajin looked down triumphantly at his defeated opponent, seemingly as if he had let the person go, but his cruel nature and the pampering he received from childhood had created a true monster. Without the slightest hesitation, he coldly swung his sword, taking the life of the unfortunate man. You think you can escape just by admitting defeat. He didn't even bother to look at the body that had just fallen, arrogantly reaching his hand forward. Next, his eyes swept across the crowd, suddenly stopping at one person. A second later, he directly pointed the tip of his sword at Daven. "You Daven?" It seemed that after a period of diligent training, Daven's physique had become stronger than before, but with a missing arm, wielding a sword was still a significant challenge for him. Daven tightly gripped the wooden sword, securing it firmly to his left arm. His eyes flashed with resentment as he stared intently at Kajin. I was once extremely envious of his strength and talent. I also longed to become strong enough to defeat him. Gripping the hilt tightly, Daven didn't hesitate and lunged forward to attack. Kajin, witnessing this scene, immediately sneered. "Daven, don't look at me like that. You know I don't like you at all." He exerted his strength, and with just one move sent Daven flying. Sending him crashing hard into the pillar. Behind a tremendous impact, cracked the pillar, while Daven slid down onto the cold ground, blood slowly spreading out from his body. Kajin looked at his miserable state and burst into mocking laughter. "A pathetic cripple like you dares to look at me like that." He approached coldly, stomping hard on Daven's already wounded body. Each stomp was heavy. He tormented him while sneering at his efforts. "You think just by trying hard, you can defeat me? If you were so capable, then try it. A useless piece of trash like you, even if you exert all your strength, your whole life will forever be no match for me." Daven, in extreme pain, lay motionless on the ground, allowing Kajin to relentlessly trample him. Despite the humiliation, he clenched his teeth tightly, not uttering a single groan. In his mind, there was only one thought: he had to defeat him. The unwavering desire to win, Daven persistently trained day and night. Disregarding all injuries, he constantly strived, but in the end, willpower alone was not enough. While Daven increasingly trained arduously, Kajin gradually indulged himself. He neglected his training, indulged in pleasures, and even got involved with dangerous stimulants. Yet I still couldn't defeat him. Kajin could be called a fallen genius, while I was just a fool training day and night in vain. But I believe that my efforts will eventually pay off. Things can stay like this forever. One morning at an arena, this was the scene of a battle between those two men, Daven and Kajin. After years of relentless training, Daven's body was now muscular and full of power. The aura emanating from him was fierce and wild. As for Kajin, he hadn't changed much, wearing knight armor. He exuded the demeanor of an arrogant and contemptible nobleman. The two men charged at each other with terrifying speed, colliding fiercely and continuously. Seeing Daven close in, Kajin immediately retreated, swinging the long sword in his hand and unleashing a powerful downward strike. But Daven was no ordinary opponent either. Through countless confrontations with Kajin, he had thoroughly understood every move of his immediately. The great sword in Daven's hand was raised to block the powerful downward strike from Kajin. He was pushed back, struggling to maintain his balance. His eyes flared with determination. Without hesitation, Daven immediately channeled mana-infusing power into his weapon. A powerful slash was unleashed, creating a sharp blade of energy that shot straight towards Kajin on its path. It left a long crack on the arena floor. Dust and smoke billowed up. Damn it! My vision. Kajin gritted his teeth. Although he had managed to block the attack, his vision was completely obscured by the dust and smoke. He strained his eyes to find Daven's figure, but couldn't see him anymore. Suddenly, a terrifying killing intent erupted right beside him. The extreme sense of danger made Kajin shudder instantly. He looked up, and that was the moment he realized he had fallen into Daven's trap. Daven had been in the air since when? He plunged with the great sword in his hand, attacking with all his might. Daven's face was full of determination. Kajin. This is the end. Kajin was completely caught off guard by this sudden ambush. He didn't have time to prepare to counterattack and could only hastily raise his longsword to block. Boom! A violent explosion resounded and the center of the arena shook. The spectators witnessing the battle couldn't help but be astonished and stunned. Daven had defeated the violent sword Kajin. When the dust gradually settled, everyone couldn't believe their eyes. Kajin had knelt down at Daven's feet. Daven's cold greatsword was pointed directly at his neck. He looked down at the one who had defeated him countless times, the one who had mocked his efforts throughout all these years. Daven's eyes were now full of indifference, counting. Today I have lost to Kajin a total of 21 matches. But now at the age of 29, I have finally done it. After so much relentless effort, I have defeated him, the one I once thought I could never surpass. Bitter memories flooded back in previous makeshift matches. Daven had never won time after time. He had fallen under Kajin's sword. The people around him had also never stopped mocking. Give up, how can you possibly defeat a genius like Kajin? They had laughed, scorned, and seen him as a failure, just wasting his time. But now I have won. I have proven that all my efforts were not in vain. The entire arena suddenly erupted in wild cheers. Daven, Daven, Daven. In the arena, Daven looked at Kajin, who was now just a struggling figure. He said coldly, "How much longer do you think you can remain arrogant?" Kajin looked up, his face full of rage and unwillingness. Impossible. How could I lose to a failure like you? These words were something Daven had heard so many times that his ears no longer bothered to register them. Daven remembered his parents. If only you were Kajin. I wish my son could be like Kajin. Those words had been a haunting obsession throughout his life. Looking directly at Kajin, Daven uttered a firm statement. If I were you, I wouldn't live like you. Being lectured by someone he had always looked down on, Kajin's anger seemed to explode. You dare to insult me, you bastard! But Daven no longer cared about his reaction. If I were you, I wouldn't waste my life on wine women or wallowing in addiction. I would live a more worthy life. I would ascend to the peak of this continent. Daven turned and left the arena. He had finally won. This was over. But suddenly, Daven's eyes widened. Kajin had not adhered to the spirit of a true knight. He had betrayed everything. A sharp blade pierced through his chest. Daven collapsed, no matter how arduous his training, no matter how strong his body had become. He couldn't defend against such a sneak attack. In the stands, the audience was silent. No one understood what had just happened. What the hell is going on? Did Kajin just stab Daven from behind? Even as intense pain spread throughout his body, Daven's face still held a smile. Kajin, even until the very end. You are just a coward." Hearing those words, Kajin's whole body trembled. He wasn't sure if it was out of fear or excitement. "It hurts so much, but shouldn't I be going crazy over this? I finally defeated Kajin, but it seems this is really the end for me." Daven stared intently at the sword embedded in his back. It was the sunlight-cleaving sword, a sacred weapon passed down only to the descendants of the Samyan clan. This sword carried a flow of anti-demon mana once struck by it. Even if the Saintess La herself appeared, there would be no saving him. Even though he realized death was near, Daven turned his head to look at Kajin, the corner of his lips curving into a mocking smile. "Kajin, your whole life, you will only be known as a defeated one." Daven's eyes gradually closed, darkness engulfing his consciousness. The scene shifted to a dark, damp place, a dungeon. Daven's body was tightly bound to a chair as this hell. He gradually woke up, and before his eyes was a large jailer. Holding iron chains in his hand, he sneered, "Hell, you are quite lucky. Who would have thought Saintess La would appear at the arena?" Daven flinched slightly. Saintess La?" The jailer continued. "The Saintess used her divine power to heal you, a wretch like you should have died, but you survived thanks to her blessing." Hearing this, Daven thought to himself, "So that's it, that's why I am still alive. But now this body was completely ruined. What meaning did it have to be a cripple who could only breathe and live like this?" The jailer looked at him with contempt. "You signed a pact with a demon, didn't you?" Daven immediately glared. "What are you talking about?" The jailer chuckled coldly. "You look so surprised only someone who sold their soul to a demon could defeat Kajin. Your parents have already admitted it, why bother denying it?" The image of his parents flashed through Daven's mind. In that moment he understood everything. "So that's it, I understand now." The jailer continued, his voice full of mockery. "We found blood and sacrificial offerings at your residence. You took the lives of 300 innocent children in exchange for power. Young Master Kajin personally executed you to protect the honor of the Samyan family, to have to personally deal with his cousin and childhood friend. He must have been in great pain." Daven laughed bitterly. "So that's how it is I defeated Kajin, but I didn't touch the family's interests, and yet they chose to abandon me to protect him. It's only natural. How could a useless wretch like me compare to him?" The prison warden paid no attention to Daven's words. He simply spoke in a low voice, repeating the verdict. Daven had disgraced the honor of his family, and therefore his mana would be sealed and he would be sentenced to life imprisonment. Prepare to rot in this prison. After that, the tendons in Daven's arms and legs were severed. The mana in his body was sealed by layers of heavy shackles. Even though his eyes were covered, they threw him down to the very bottom of the dark prison, where not a single ray of light could penetrate. Daven heard footsteps approaching someone. He suddenly chuckled faintly. "Kajin, is that you? Have you come to witness my pathetic state?" Kajin stood before Daven, his face full of smugness. "This appearance truly suits you, Daven." He smirked coldly. "I have become the Sword King. The outside world endlessly praises me as an outstanding swordmaster. It is all thanks to you, you know? Thank you, you piece of trash." From the day Kajin came to humiliate him, Daven's daily food rations gradually decreased. After many months of insufficient nutrition, Daven's once strong body was now just a withered skeleton, so hungry. Dry coughs echoed continuously, accompanied by streaks of bright red blood. "If I have to die, I want to die with dignity. My fate should have ended at the arena." Daven's body was too weak. He collapsed onto the cold floor. "If only I hadn't lost this arm, would my life have been different, even at this very moment. I still reminisce about the past when I was still a whole human being." Daven remembered the days when he yearned for recognition, longed for the blessing of the sword god. Kesa, even once. If I were the chosen child, would fate have taken a different turn? Unwilling to accept it, Daven didn't want to die. He wanted to live. A tear silently fell in the endless darkness. Just when he thought it was all over, a faint ray of light suddenly flickered. "No matter what, I will definitely not fall. Elder in the family is talking to you. Are you even listening?" The darkness gradually dissipated, and Daven's eyes slowly opened. "Vincen, what am I thinking?" A strong hand gripped Daven's right shoulder tightly. The pain that shot through him stunned him. "This feeling, is it? From my right arm? Is this a dream? If so, why does it feel so real?" Daven looked up at the man in front of him, his heart filled with astonishment. Who is this person? At that very moment, streams of unfamiliar memories surged into Daven's mind like a wave. Do I know him? He quickly realized this was an elder from a branch family, but why did he have memories of this person? Wait, what did he just call me? Vincen, the seventh son of the Adenka family. What were these strange memories? Even so, this dream was not gloomy, like a nightmare. The air here was so fresh, with no more stench or disgusting feeling like in the underground prison. And above all, in this dream he had his right arm back. This a gift before I die. Seeing Daven still standing motionless, the elder immediately snapped, "How much longer are you going to ignore me?" As soon as that voice rang out, a sharp pain suddenly erupted from Daven's right arm. This was mana. He was using mana to make him feel pain. This familiar sensation triggered Daven's fighting instincts, honed over many years. The simplest way to deal with this type of attack was to create distance from the opponent. Daven immediately adopted a defensive stance. To counterattack, his right arm reached out and tightly gripped the opponent's wrist. The elder froze in surprise. Could it be that he didn't have time to react? Immediately after, a powerful palm strike from Daven instantly pushed him back. Daven himself was also surprised. What the hell just happened? My block wasn't strong enough to send him flying like that. Clearly he could control mana at a sophisticated level. But why was his reaction so slow? Daven lowered his head and quickly said, "I only acted unintentionally." He reached out his hand to help him up, but the other party immediately brushed his hand away. "You insolent brat, just because you belong to the main family you dare to look down on me." His eyes flashed with madness. "My son will definitely crush you without mercy. This will be the first time a branch family defeats the main family." Hearing those words, Daven suddenly thought of his father, the cruel man who had always yearned to defeat his older brother. Is he the same as my father? When they couldn't achieve their ambitions, they placed all those hopes on their children, turning the child into a tool to complete their unfinished dreams. Daven involuntarily thought of his son. Will that child also become an unfilial son like me? The elder walked step by step towards the door. His deep voice echoed, "I will never forget your arrogance and rudeness today." Having said that, he paused for a moment, then turned his head to look at Daven with cold eyes. "Just wait until the true sword conference, Daven." Daven stood silently in the large room, watching the man's figure gradually disappear from his sight. This room was indeed magnificent, clearly demonstrating the wealth and power of the Adenka family. He quietly walked towards a chair. Sitting down, he murmured to himself, "Could this really not be a dream? Shouldn't I have woken up a long time ago?" Closing his eyes, fragments of unfamiliar memories suddenly flooded Daven's mind. He suddenly understood his current identity. Mother passed away right after giving birth to me. Father has never once cared about me. The other children in the family only saw me as something to vent their anger on. Among the 8 children of the prestigious Adenka sword art family, Vincen was only the 7th son. So yielding that, he only knew how to hide in his room and cry after each torment by the youngest child, a weak, useless person abandoned by the main family, becoming a target for those in the branch families who always longed to overthrow the main family. Daven bitterly realized, I have gone from Daven, the defeated one of the Samyon family, to Vincen, the useless one of the Adenka family. Is this what people call reincarnation? He couldn't understand it. Just then, an object on the bookshelf caught his eye. It was a diary. A diary. Daven immediately walked over and opened it. Before his eyes, lines of text filled with Vincen's resentment appeared clearly. Why can't I do the things my older siblings can? Those from the branch families always look for opportunities to trample on me. Servants and maids also treat me as invisible. I have no advantages at all. Perhaps death is the only path for me. Looking at each line filled with despair, Daven sighed softly. The entire diary was just self-reproach. It seemed his self-esteem had fallen to the very bottom of the abyss, to the point of completely giving up on everything. Suddenly a voice rang out. It seems God has heard our prayers, kid. Daven froze until the very last moment. I longed to live while he always wanted to die. But is it really that simple? The one who yearns for death disappears, while the one who wants to continue living is reborn. Daven was shocked. Could this be the true meaning of reincarnation? Just as that thought popped into his head, another voice suddenly spoke, carrying a mocking tone. You are actually going to believe such nonsense? Hearing that, Daven immediately became alert, his eyes darting around to observe his surroundings. Who are you? Show yourself. He focused all his senses to pinpoint the location of the speaker, but he couldn't find any trace of him. The voice continued to echo. Are you being naive or simply stupid? Cold sweat began to trickle down. Daven's face is a demon trying to deceive me. These two things, my reincarnation shouldn't have happened in the first place. The other being seemed to have read his thoughts and chuckled contemptuously. You're thinking too deeply. I am the original owner of the body you currently possess. Daven was stunned. The original owner, finally that being, was willing to show himself. It was a young man with a scholarly appearance, wearing glasses on his eyes. He smirked, his tone full of sarcasm. Exactly, my name used to be Vincen. But since I gave this body back to you, that name no longer belongs to me. You can now call me Julian. Daven looked directly at Julian, his eyes full of suspicion, and asked, Weren't you dead? How is this possible? Julian smiled faintly and slowly explained, This is an enlightenment. Daven frowned, still not understanding the implication of his words. Enlightenment. That are you talking about? Involuntarily, an idea flashed in his mind. Enlightenment isn't that something bestowed upon humans by the gods? I once heard that those who are blessed from birth can sometimes hear enlightenments. Suddenly he turned sharply towards Julian, pointing his finger at him, his voice full of astonishment. Could it be that you re-implying you a god? Seeing Daven's reaction, Julian burst into laughter. That's right, but I am just a minor god, he continued to explain. Originally, I intended to summon a true god, but in the end, you took that position. If I want to become a true god, instead of just a minor one, I have to accomplish countless achievements. We call that reincarnation. If I can overcome all of my reincarnations, I will truly become a god. Hearing this, Daven gradually understood the situation, but he still felt confused. I understand your circumstances, but how do your achievements relate to me? If what you say is true, then I have been reincarnated, and I will be very busy with my new life, so I don't have time to listen to such far-fetched things. Julian didn't show any anger at Daven's attitude. He just smirked and calmly replied that es right, you desired a new life, and I gave up on myself. As a result, you were reincarnated into my body. However, my soul is now extremely weak. If it completely disappears, then this body, the one you possess, will also die. Does that sound all right to you? Hearing this, Daven's expression darkened and his voice became cold. Are you threatening me? This body is still very healthy. How could it die so easily? But before he could finish speaking, he suddenly felt all his strength drain away. A surge of intense pain struck him, forcing him to collapse to his knees. You bastard! Daven fell to the floor, his breathing becoming heavy. Julian looked down at him and said casually, You see, don't be so naive. From now on, I will show you my true memories. Immediately, Julian's figure gradually faded. Turning into a bolt of lightning that struck Daven's body directly, ancient memories began to flood his mind. Trash idiot. Kick him a few more times. In each replayed scene, Vincen was constantly humiliated and trampled upon by others. But hidden behind that weakness was a pair of cold, indifferent eyes. Without any emotion, Daven saw that image and suddenly understood something. That expression, so that it, he wasn't despairing, he was just pretending to be weak. He had deliberately concealed himself step by step, laying the groundwork for revenge. A plan devised by a child who was only 13 years old. What kind of monstrous world have I been reincarnated into? While Daven was still lost in thought, Julian's voice suddenly echoed in his head. Well, do you think my performance was perfect? I struggled to escape the family's surveillance. The knowledge I wanted to research was all considered forbidden, belonging only to the level of the apostles. Now do you want to hear what I have to say? This won't harm you either, Daven sighed, finally giving in. All right, so do you know the great villain? Daven and the hero Kajin. Hearing those familiar names from his previous life, Daven immediately froze, staring directly at Julian. What did you just say? The great villain Daven the hero Kajin. Julian smiled mysteriously. I will tell you the story of the great demon King Daven and the hero Vuong Kajin, a story that happened 500 years ago. Outside, a fierce sandstorm howled. At the Samyeon family's mansion, a nightmare was about to repeat itself. The guest, Daven, had successfully escaped from the Samyeon family's dungeon. In that escape, the Samyeon family suffered heavy manpower losses. Not only that, because Daven had made a pact with a demon, he had taken the lives of thousands of innocent people in exchange for overwhelming power. Rumor had it that he had taken the lives of 10,000 people because of this. The name Great Villain Daven was recorded in history books. Hearing this story from Julian Daven couldn't help but be stunned. The great villain Daven existed 500 years ago. Could it be that I have been reincarnated into the future 500 years later? This is completely illogical. But in this world, there are countless people with the same name. It's not strange to meet someone else named Daven. However, that person also shares the same bloodline as the Samian family. While Daven's mind was in turmoil with overlapping thoughts, Julian continued his story. However, at this point he was no longer in the mood to listen in his head. Only one thing repeated impossible. I died in the family's dungeon 500 years ago. The Samian family abandoned me, a cripple who lost his right arm, and then bestowed the title of Sword King upon Kajin. I died in solitude. And he was praised as a hero, and now they are distorting history, turning me into a great demon, and Kajin the coward who launched a sneak attack has become the hero king. Indeed, they know how to fabricate stories. The more Daven thought, the more furious he became. He slammed his fist hard on the table, creating a violent tremor that shattered the tabletop. But Julian seemed indifferent to Daven's emotions. He continued excitedly, the hero King Kajin actually deeply loved the great demon Daven Don. You think that's romantic? This sentence was the last straw. Daven jumped up and roared, enough, stop telling such absurd stories. Julian was surprised. Why are you so angry? How can I not be angry? They have twisted the entire history. Julian paused, his eyes full of astonishment. Wait, you are from that era. Daven gritted his teeth and nodded, realizing this. Julian just shrugged and smiled nonchalantly, so that's how it is. But you're quite old now, Don, to be angry, old man. After all, isn't history always written by the victors? Daven took a deep breath, trying to suppress his anger, and then looked directly at Julian. But a kid who is only 13 years old like you is saying such things to me. Don't underestimate the children of today. We mature much faster than your generation. Julian chuckled faintly. Daven sighed, picked up the overturned chair, put it back in place, and sat down. All right, fine. Just continue your story. Julian nodded and continued the interrupted story. Right, as I was saying. At that time, the hero, King Kajin, had to suppress his pain to join forces with an outstanding swordsman of that era, his closest friend, the Sun Sword King, to defeat the great demon. Hearing that unfamiliar name, Daven frowned. The Sun Sword King. I've never heard that name before. Arslan. He is the ancestor of the Adenka family. As soon as he heard the name, Arslan Daven paused. An old memory surged back, causing him to chuckle softly. Arslan lol, wasn't he that mischievous little brat? I never expected him to become the first head of the Adenka family. In Daven's mind, the image of a playful boy with radiant blue hair appeared. That little boy had once looked at him with admiration, giving a bright smile and saying, "Hello, Mr. Daven. I'm Arslan. I really admire you. When I grow up, I want to become a swordsman as strong as you." Although Arslan was still young at the time, he was a close friend, and also a student of mine. What was there for a cripple like me to admire? Throughout the months I was imprisoned in the family's dungeon, Arslan was the only one who sincerely visited and cared for me. I still remember vividly what that little boy once said, "You have never committed any sin. Power can never triumph over the truth. I will definitely prove that no matter how long it takes, I will surely restore your honor." However, from that day on, Arslan never came back again, while Daven was still lost in his thoughts. Julian continued the story. He was the first head of the Adenka family and left an important mission for future generations. Moreover, it is directly related to my achievements. Daven asked curiously, "What mission?" Julian replied seriously, "It is to defeat the Samian family and fight for the truth." As soon as he heard this, Daven suddenly woke up. Everything seemed to have become clear. Fight for the truth, so that's how it is this just a coincidence? Arslan once promised me that he would fight to uncover the truth. He was also the only one who knew exactly what happened back then. No, this definitely can't just be a coincidence. My reincarnation in the body of Vincen, a descendant of the Aska family, must have a hidden reason behind it. Although I don't know all the details, I know one thing clearly. Arslan Fanner abandoned the Fanner family to establish the Aska family with the sole purpose of fighting for the truth. The Arenka family was newly established to restore my honor there. No doubt it was all fate, which is why I was able to be reborn in this place. Daven suddenly stood up, his sharp eyes staring intently at Julian. "You are a member of the Arenka family, and my mission is to fulfill the task you entrusted to me, right? If I succeed, will you truly become a god? Julian nodded slightly in confirmation. That's right, if that really happens, I will become the master of this body. And if I become a god, I will definitely bless you. This is a mutually beneficial arrangement. What do you think, Daven? Didn't he answer immediately? He slowly walked over to the sword hanging on the wall, gently touched it, and said, Thank you, Arslan. I will continue to fulfill the mission you left behind, not only to realize your wish, but also to reclaim my own honor, the Sam Yan family. I will definitely surpass them. Daven's eyes burned with determination. I will rise within the very family that once betrayed me. Daven and Julian left the room together. The two of them slowly walked down the corridor at this moment. Julian asked curiously, Hey, old man, where are you planning to go? Hearing how Julian addressed him, Daven couldn't help but feel annoyed. How many times have I told you, Don, to call me old man? Julian chuckled. Come on, if you really are from 500 years ago, then aren't you indeed an old man? Daven narrowed his eyes, his tone carrying a hint of threat. What did you say? Julian quickly changed his tone, earnestly pleading, Okay, Daven, I want to call you that anymore. Daven nodded in satisfaction just then. A loud shout echoed from afar. Everyone get into position, prepare to fight. Daven was immediately drawn in. It seemed that the members of the Aska family were practicing combat with each other, the clashing of swords. Bright sparks flashed in the duels between the knights. Looking at the scene before him, Daven couldn't hide his excitement. I wonder how much the martial arts of this era have developed. Even though 500 years have passed, martial arts must have advanced significantly. Sam Yan family Kajin, I really want to know how strong your descendants have become. The corner of Daven's lips slightly curved up, his eyes full of anticipation. Things are gradually becoming interesting. What's going on? Why has my body become so heavy? This feeling is so uncomfortable. Daven held his head, the aching pain seeming to spread throughout his entire body. This body, my strength is gradually draining away. Before long, he collapsed. Those around him immediately rushed over to support Daven and took him back to his room after a period of rest. Daven gradually woke up. He began to focus on cultivating Vincen. This kid's body is so weak that he faints so easily. How terrible if I don't constantly use mana to regulate it. I probably can't even maintain a normal state. While adjusting the flow of mana to recover his strength, Daven suddenly sensed something strange within his body. What is this? He immediately opened his eyes. Why'd my mana it's moving in this way, could it be? To verify his suspicion, Daven immediately sat up and loudly called out, Julian. Julian, where are you? Come out here. Hearing the call, Julian hurriedly appeared, looking sleepy with his pajamas disheveled. What is it? Why are you making such a racket in the middle of the night? I still want to sleep. Daven immediately grabbed Julian's shoulders, his eyes serious. Listen to me, why don't you study swordsmanship? Julian was surprised by this question, but still answered honestly. I've had many illnesses since I was little, so I couldn't learn. Daven frowned. You've been like that since birth? Could it be that no one has ever told you that your body possesses a holy core? Julian frowned and tried to pull away from Daven. Let go of me. What the hell is a holy bone, and why are you so worked up about it? Is it really that big of a deal? Daven answered seriously. Are you stupid? The holy bone is an incredibly powerful physique. It allows you to store mana throughout your entire body. Simply put, it lets you accumulate a massive amount of mana within your bones. Julian's face showed clear bewilderment. Store mana in bones. Looking at Julian's slow comprehension, Daven helplessly rubbed his temples. Oh heavens, I'm going crazy. How can I explain this for you to understand? He took a deep breath, trying to articulate more clearly. Listen carefully. A martial artist needs to use mana to obtain extraordinary power, helping them achieve incredible feats, but for ordinary martial artists, their mana capacity is limited because it can only be stored in the heart. As for those who possess a holy core besides their heart, they can also store mana within their bones. That means their mana source is almost inexhaustible. Julian froze, then exclaimed in astonishment, Oh really? Could it be that I also possess this special thing? Daven asked seriously. Julian, do you really understand the importance of possessing a holy core? His face fell. Kajin, the one you call the hero king, also possesses a holy core. Daven clenched his fists. Feeling the changes in this new body, he couldn't help but feel ironic, unbelievable after reincarnating. I actually possess a body exactly like Kajin, the one I always hated in my previous life. However, the world after 500 years had become much stranger than what Daven once knew. He couldn't help but look wistfully into the distance. At this moment, Julian had fully woken up and walked in front of Daven. However, his tone still held a hint of sleepiness. "All right, Daven. Listen to me, it's been a long time since I could link a symbol to my heart." Daven frowned. "Symbol? What are you talking about?" Seeing Daven's clueless attitude, Julian sighed in frustration and angrily buried his face in the pillow. "What S with your attitude?" Daven frowned uncomfortably. This guy is so annoying. Since when did I have to explain such basic cultivation knowledge? Julian adjusted his thoughts and then said slowly, "All right, Daven, listen to this. A symbol is a form of image that represents each person as mana." Hearing this, Daven immediately stood up and retorted, "What are you talking about? Isn't mana stored in the human heart? Could it be that you don't even have meditation methods?" Julian was equally surprised. Meditation methods? What are you talking about? Seeing that reaction, Daven quickly realized that in this era, no one used meditation cultivation methods anymore. He then explained, "You want to know about meditation. B.H. Vonner was the first person capable of storing a massive amount of mana in his heart, and because of that, he created the meditation method, an extremely effective technique that helps martial artists quickly concentrate a large amount of mana into the heart." After listening, Julian shook his head slightly and replied, "In this era, we have developed a different method to store mana in a symbol and call it a star. The number of stars a person possesses is the measure of their strength. It has been a long time since anyone used the body to store mana. I also don't think anyone still uses that method." Hearing this, Daven could only sigh. The cultivation methods of people in this era were truly different. He stood up abruptly, picked up the sword, and walked to the window. "So that means in every family, everyone must possess at least one symbol, and only when they can connect with the symbol and sense mana do they have the qualification to become a one-star martial artist." Daven pondered. It seems this cultivation method was created to minimize the risks of using the heart as a place to store mana. In the past, countless people faced danger when cultivating in the old way. Once the heart or mana source lost stability, it would explode, causing extremely catastrophic consequences. But Daven was different. He took a deep breath, focused his mind, and continuously circulated the flow of mana, spreading it throughout his body. Julian, seeing this from the side, immediately shouted anxiously, "Wait, what the hell are you doing? Are you gathering mana in your heart? Do you want to die?" Daven practiced while giving a confident smile. "Don't worry, my heart is very strong. There won't be any problems if I want to become stronger. I must be willing to face challenges." He continued to sink into his memories, recalling the martial arts he had used before and training based on them. That's right, this feeling. Daven clenched his fist. One hand also used this method to gain power. Julian frowned, still not understanding. "Wait, why are you letting mana spread all over your body like that? That cultivation method is completely wrong. Don't you know the formula for meridians?" Daven was highly focused, but Julian's constant chatter by his ear annoyed him. "You're too noisy. Is there any other method?" Julian nodded vigorously. "Of course there is, who cultivates haphazardly like you. There must be a formula to utilize mana properly." Daven quietly looked at him, his eyes calm. "I am just trying to recreate the feeling of cultivation from the past," Julian immediately warned, "but quite a few people have failed with that method. It's too dangerous." Daven smirked faintly. "You don't need to remind me. I know very well that once magical energy loses stability, it will transform and erupt in an instant." Julian's eyes widened as he asked, "So that means instant death?" Daven shook his head slightly, his tone nonchalant. "It's not that serious. If you only lose a part of your life, doesn't that sound better?" Julian frowned in annoyance. "Hey, isn't that body yours? Why are you using it so carelessly? Could you please cherish it?" "A little." Daven waved his hand dismissively, his voice indifferent. All right, cherish it. Got it? But ultimately, why do you care what I do with this body?" Julian was puzzled. "What do you mean, do you really not know, or are you just pretending to be naive?" He stared intently at Daven and continued, "Your appearance isn't bad at all. Even your heart is very healthy. If you just live peacefully under the name of the Adenka family, you will definitely have a place in the family. A symbol is extremely important for gathering mana, but it also needs to absorb mana to exist. No one pays attention to this, but because of this, Vincen Arenka's body will not be able to survive to adulthood. Julian said nothing more. He gradually disappeared into the darkness. The main residence of the Adenka family, viewed from the outside, exuded grandeur and majesty. Inside Vincen's room, Daven was sitting in silent meditation. He focused on adjusting his state. The flow of mana that Daven stirred up caused the surrounding objects to float in midair. This meditation method can help me avoid many illnesses, but after all, it also has its limits. Perhaps my time is only about 10 years left. 10 years, but that's enough. This time is sufficient for me to reach the Sword King realm. At that time, Daven Nathu will reappear in the world. What a coincidence. 10 years is also exactly the amount of time Daven was imprisoned in the dungeon, slowly starved to death. Indeed, this life is truly ironic. Bitter memories surged back, preventing him from continuing to focus on meditation. Daven's body trembled slightly with rage. "Young master, what are you doing in there? Answer me quickly." The sound of frantic knocking echoed from outside. Hearing this, Daven stopped his cultivation. The surrounding mana gradually dissipated and everything fell to the ground. He frowned and glanced towards the door. Who is it? Without waiting for Daven's permission, a young man pushed the door open and stepped inside. He swept his eyes around the messy room and shook his head, his voice full of displeasure. "Heavens, what is this, young master? What have you done in the room again?" Daven slowly stood up, adjusting his breathing. He calmly asked, "Are you my servant?" The young man crossed his arms and snorted coldly. "Of course, who else would I be? But young master, are you all right?" Your way of speaking, his tone was extremely casual, without the slightest respect. Daven didn't pay any attention to his words. He searched Vincen's memories, trying to recall the identity of this servant. Let us see, he is Wilson, the one Julian planned to kill in 3 years. Thinking of this, Daven chuckled softly. What's the point of thinking so much? After all, I am Vincen now. Daven took off his sweat-soaked clothes and threw them towards Wilson. You came at the right time. Bring me a clean set of clothes and clean up this room. Wilson stood frozen, unable to believe what he had just heard. A cowardly Vincen dared to order him around what was happening. Why was the young master so bold today? Wasn't he always timid and weak? He narrowed his eyes slightly, thinking to himself, is this still the weak Vincen I used to know? Wilson glanced at Daven, then tried to threaten him. Young master, what exactly did you do to make this room so messy? Could it be that you were doing some crazy experiment? Daven smirked, his tone full of sarcasm. Experiment, you think I'm crazy? I didn't do anything. Wilson continued his verbal attack. You hide in your room, reading books all day until you're crazy? What good does that do? Don't tell me you've learned dark magic. I will definitely report this. Daven had lived long enough to see through such petty tricks. He smirked in response. It is rare for a servant to dare speak to their master in that way. Daven's nonchalant attitude made Wilson feel uneasy. What did you say? Daven slowly continued, his tone unwavering. You constantly want to do things that your master doesn't ask for, which means from the beginning you had no intention of listening to me, right? Wilson was stunned by those sharp words. Daven, not bothering with his reaction, continued, his face full of killing. Intent, it's true that I gave you more work than usual, but isn't it that your duty? The invisible pressure from Daven made Wilson feel suffocated. He immediately shouted, I told you I don't do things I don't want to. What do you think I am here for? Daven looked at him coldly. That's right, you are just a servant, aren't you, Wilson? He casually picked up the clothes in Wilson's hand, and while walking away he uttered a threatening sentence. All right, if you don't want to do it, then Dondi, I can get my own clothes. Wilson immediately had a bad premonition, young master. Where are you planning to go? Daven stopped, slightly turned his head back, and gave a meaningful smile. I'm planning to go to Lord Chamberlain to get clothes. I'll say, I had to go myself because Wilson refused to work. Hearing this, Wilson's expression changed drastically. He knew that if the young master really did, that his job would definitely be lost. Immediately, Wilson rushed forward, hastily, grabbing the clothes. I'll do it right away. Who said I didn't want to? I'll even clean this whole room. Just leave it to me. Daven looked at Wilson with indifferent eyes. He couldn't help but think of Vincen's previous situation, a coward to the point where even a servant could look down on him. These guys definitely have their own agenda. At this moment, Julian appeared behind him, his voice low. That's right, I think so too. Daven glanced at him indifferently and replied, they were just people who don't know their place, constantly testing other people. As limits, we need to show them what the seventh master of the Adenka family is really like. Julian looked worried, but Vincen is also a member of the zealots who killed hundreds of people. What should we do? Daven chuckled, his voice carrying sarcasm. Killing people. Listen to this. A true killer always carries a special aura, but I don't sense that from him. That guy's just a useless wretch. His eyes are still too naive. Just a weakling not worth bothering about. Hearing this, Julian couldn't help but frown. You talk as if you were one of them. Otherwise, how would you understand so clearly? Daven raised his head and looked directly at Julian, his dark eyes exuding an extreme dread, because I have lived through a lifetime already. Julian suddenly felt an immense pressure from Daven. Fear rose in his heart. Could it be that I summoned something even more terrifying than the Demon King? After a while of talking, Daven returned to his room outside. Vincent's voice rang out. Young master, I have finished washing your clothes. Soon after, Vincent hurriedly stepped inside. Although his tone still carried resentment, he had clearly restrained himself a lot. I wonder if you are satisfied with how I cleaned the room. Daven sat on the chair, his manner relaxed, a faint smile on his lips. Thank you sincerely for working hard. Vincent quickly folded the clothes and placed them on the table. Please, in the future, don't turn your room into a battlefield again. Daven shrugged his tone. Casual. All right, I want to do it again. Vincent quickly folded the clothes and placed them on the table. Please, in the future, don't turn your room into a battlefield again. Daven shrugged his tone. Casual. All right, I want to do it again. Daven looked directly at the servant and slowly commanded Vincent. Go find someone to bring me a wooden sword about 1 meter long. The shape should be like this. If it weighs about 500 grams, that would be even better. Also, the sword must be made of black wood. The family's storage should definitely have plenty of such things. Vincent raised an eyebrow, his attitude becoming arrogant. What if I refuse that request? Daven was already too familiar with how to deal with his subordinates. He quietly stood up, left the chair, and walked towards the door. His deep voice said, if you don't do it, that is fine. Then I'll go get it myself. Daven suddenly stopped, a thoughtful look flashing in his eyes. But wait. How should I answer the gatekeeper when he asks why I have to go to the storage myself? He glanced at Vincent, the corner of his lips curving into a meaningful smile. Ah, right, Vincent. Do you know that the people guarding the storage are all experts? Moreover, they are extremely loyal to the descendants of the family. Vincent's expression immediately changed. Seeing that Daven was still ignoring him, he hurriedly stopped him. Wait, young master, please don't do that. I didn't mean it that way. But Daven didn't stop at all. Vincent panicked and hurriedly reached out to touch Daven's right shoulder. Young master, please wait, I will. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly felt his entire body being lifted into the air. In just a blink of an eye, Daven used force to slam him onto the floor. Vincent groaned in pain. Ouch, young master. Daven looked at him coldly, his voice carrying a warning. I'm sorry, but I have quite a few unpleasant memories of being attacked from behind, so anything that dares to touch my back, I won't easily let go. Vincent grimaced, trying to suppress the pain. Are you kidding me? Have I been following you since you were little? Have I never heard you mention this before? Daven turned his back, his voice becoming cold. Then that's good. Engrave this in your head from now on. It's all for your own life. Vincent didn't realize that after that throw, Daven's body was trembling. In waves, beads of sweat silently rolled down his face. Damn it, this body is too weak. Just one move and it hurts this much. Vincent stood up, glaring at Daven angrily. Daven just quietly tilted his head and glanced at him, his tone nonchalant. What do you have an opinion about me? Vincent immediately shrunk back, hurriedly bowing his head. No, I have no opinion at all. What was your order again? Ah, right. A 1 meter long, wooden sword made of black wood. Wasn't he it? Daven chuckled faintly. Didn't you just say you didn't want to go get it? Vincent waved his hands frantically. I didn't say that. I'll go get it right away with that. He quickly left the room, trying to suppress his anger. The door slammed shut, but immediately after Vincent quietly peeked open the door, offering a forced smile. I apologize, sir. It was just the strong wind that made the door slam shut. Just now. Not intentional at all. Please understand. Daven watched Vincent's retreating figure disappear, the corner of his lips curling into a mocking smile. Indeed, a cowardly mouse, I haven't even said anything, and he is already that scared. After a while, Wilson finally returned, holding the wooden sword in his hands. His face was full of anger as he approached Daven's room. I want to lose to him again. Not even once more. I will definitely show him why I am called Wilson. He endlessly imagined the scene of how he would hand this sword to Daven. Striding into the room, Wilson held out the wooden sword in front of Daven, his tone somewhat provocative. "Young master, is this the sword you requested? Well, did you think I would just hand it over to you easily, without any displeasure?" Daven, who was now sitting on the chair with a book in his hands, seemed to be studying history. After 500 years of change, when he saw Wilson approach with the sword, he spoke softly, his tone casual. "Wilson, do you know that among the people I once knew, there was someone who lost his right arm?" Wilson was slightly surprised he didn't understand what his young master was trying to say. "Who are you talking about, sir?" Daven gently turned the page of the book, his eyes becoming cold because he didn't have a right arm. His life was full of difficulties, and then, at the end of his life, he experienced something extremely tragic. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became tense. Wilson sensed the abnormality. All his initial calculations instantly vanished. He quickly bowed, offering the sword with both hands in a respectful manner. "This is your wooden sword." Young master, seeing Wilson's attitude, Daven didn't want to make things difficult for him. He reached out and took the sword, nodding slightly. "All right, you've worked hard." Wilson clenched his fists, trying to suppress his emotions. "This is humiliating. I've never been treated like this before." He gritted his teeth, each word filled with resentment. "Now that I've completed the task you assigned, may I leave?" Without waiting for Daven's reply, Wilson immediately turned and left the room. Daven watched him go, still holding the wooden sword, his eyes full of thought. "All right, that's settled now. I just need to find some suitable exercises." At the training grounds, the sound of the wooden sword clashing against the sandbags echoed continuously. Daven was pouring all his strength into training his new body. Each swing of his sword carried a power as if it were an instinct deeply ingrained in his bones from his previous life. Still, as his old habit, he used his left hand to hold the sword and attack, because in his previous life he had lost his right arm. Daven panted heavily, sweat constantly dripping down. I knew this body was weak, but I didn't expect to be exhausted after just a few sword swings. It seems the road ahead is still very long. However, when he tightly gripped the sword in his hand, a familiar feeling welled up in his heart. This feeling, it is wonderful. How long has it been since I held a sword? Ever since I was imprisoned in the Samion family's dungeon. It seems that deep down, becoming a swordsman is my instinct. While Daven was still lost in his past thoughts, a sharp sword strike suddenly slashed across his training dummy. "Sorry, my mana is too weak, so I didn't think anyone was using this dummy." Another teenager appeared carrying a wooden sword over his shoulder. His voice was full of disdain. Daven immediately sensed the provocation in his attitude. He tilted his head, his eyes sharp. "Who are you? Do we know each other?" The teenager chuckled faintly, his eyes arrogant. "I am Revan Arenka, aren't you that useless guy, Vincen?" Daven intently observed Revan's face, seemingly trying to rummage through Vincen's memories to identify who he was. While Daven was still thinking, Julian's voice suddenly echoed in his head. "Revan Arenka, he's just a spare heir?" Daven flinched. "Julian, is that you?" "Yes, I am using telepathy to talk to you. That guy Revan is also one of the promising candidates to win the True Sword Conference this time. Didn't you meet his father before?" Hearing that, Daven suddenly remembered that was the man he had met right after reincarnating, so he's that guy's son. Seeing Daven standing there blankly, Revan took the initiative to step forward. Julian, understanding his nature and knowing that Revan was not someone to be trifled with, immediately reminded him, "You should be careful. He is one of the most outstanding spare heirs, possessing skills far superior to the 13-year-olds in the Adenka family." Revan approached with an arrogant expression. "Vincen, I presume that if I win this True Sword Conference, my next opponent will be you, so I came here to meet you." This was the second time Daven had heard mention of the True Sword Conference. Immediately, memories of it surfaced in his mind. The True Sword Conference, that's a swordsmanship tournament that gathers the descendants of the master swordsman families from the Arenka branch. Since there is no age limit, most people participate at the age of 14. The champion of the conference will have the opportunity to challenge the official heir of the Enka family of the same age. This year. That person is me, Vincen, the one considered the weakest among the official heirs. Seeing that Daven had no reaction to his provocation, Revan immediately became angry. Do you think you can avoid me? Are you too scared to face me? Let me tell you this time, things won, to just stop at wooden swords. Daven chuckled. Are you kidding me? How can a martial artist be afraid of swords? Hearing that, Revan smirked contemptuously. It seems you are quite the talker, truly the demeanor of an official heir. Daven looked at him, unconcerned. I see your taunting skills aren't bad either. But even that must have its limits and its own level. Remembering the past, Daven thought to himself, why does he dare to insult others, even during training? He is truly too rude. For a true martial artist, respect in both training and battle is paramount. Even Kajin had to respect that rule. Thinking of this, Daven's expression turned cold. He said in a deep voice, shattering another training dummy. You are a disgrace to all martial artists. You yourself should feel ashamed of your actions. Is that how your father and those in the spare air line taught you to behave? Hearing that, Revan's face immediately changed. A cowardly wretch like Vincen dared to insult him. The anger within him surged violently. He immediately drew his sword, pointing it directly at Daven, and growled, You good for nothing. You dare insult my father. I swear that in the upcoming duel I won to show any mercy, you will pay for those words. Julian, noticing Revan's rashness, warned Daven, be careful, he has already reached the 2-star realm. Not only that, but his attribute is also close to the steel level. He is much stronger than you right now. Don't worry. Daven replied, I know very well that if I confront him now, I will definitely fail. But one thing is obvious. He reeks of the lowliness of those who raised him. He's just a spare heir, he is using mana. Even though he knows I still can control it. His father has no qualities of an elder, and he doesn't even know the basic etiquette of a martial artist. It seems the ideology of today's martial arts world is vastly different from 500 years ago. I need to make sure he understands this. Daven immediately tightened his grip on the sword. Swinging it directly towards Revan, he said, In my era, people like you would be severely punished by the elders of the family. Daven's face was now full of confidence. His aura was strong enough to make any opponent wary. However, deep down, he thought, Thank goodness I still retain the sense of distance. Revan clearly felt the terrifying pressure emanating from Daven. He gasped for breath. What the hell is this? Is he pointing his sword at me? Vincen, that coward, how does he dare to face me? He doesn't have any mana, can even cast Shadow Step yet. He's so confident. Where does that calmness come from? Cold sweat ran down Revan's forehead. He couldn't remember when that sword had been pointed directly at him. No way he can defeat me. But why has the atmosphere become so terrifying? Can he really slash me right now? Facing Daven's unwavering gaze and overwhelming aura, Revan's confidence gradually eroded. He took a step back. All right. Let us stop this here. Seeing this, Daven sheathed his sword, the corner of his lips curving into a smile. If just a few wooden swords can make you this fearful, how can I be at ease fighting you in the True Sword Conference? In the conference, things won to stop at wooden swords, you understand that, right? Revan? Daven's provocative expression made Revan unable to contain his anger. He roared, You bastard! He immediately lunged forward, the sword in his hand, carrying a surging killing intent. Julian, seeing this, immediately appeared behind Daven and shouted loudly to warn him. What are you still standing there for, Dodge? Do you want to die? But Daven remained calm as if he weren't the one about to be attacked. You were too worried, Julian. He can touch me. Just as Revan was about to strike, an urgent voice rang out, Young Master, stop immediately. A knight appeared behind Revan and immediately restrained him. It seemed this was his personal bodyguard. You cannot fight, young Master Vincen. Here, unexpectedly. Restrained Revan. Struggled, shouting angrily. What are you talking about? He insulted my father. I have to teach him a lesson. Julian, observing the scene before him, breathed a sigh of relief. Thank heavens. Daven remained calm, looked at Revan and smiled. See, I told you. The knight, seeing that his young master's anger had not subsided, patiently explained, If you injure Vincen, now he will have an excuse to avoid the match. Young master must wait until the True Sword Conference to face him. Please restrain yourself. Hearing this, Revan gritted his teeth in frustration, but in the end, he didn't make another move. His eyes flashed with hatred as he looked towards Daven. Fine, Just wait until the true sword conference, you coward. After returning to his room, Daven continued to read books to study the history of this era. Julian stood beside him, constantly nagging about what had just happened. Honestly, why did you deliberately provoke Revan like that? If his guard hadn't appeared in time to intervene, you could have been in big trouble. Daven, with an indifferent expression, replied casually, I was simply teaching that ignorant brat a lesson. Hearing this, Julian couldn't help but feel annoyed. This is insane. Why do I have to get involved in such things? I still have to worry about summoning the spirit King Daven. Still calmly turning the pages of his book, didn't care in the slightest. Yeah, sorry. And that's precisely why I am learning about the changes of this era from you. Suddenly a photograph clipped between the pages caught Daven's attention. He frowned slightly. Is this a portrait? Julian also saw the photo and immediately panicked. He hurriedly snatched it away. Hey, focus, Dante. Let your mind be distracted by such trivial things. Have you finished learning the theory of illusionary images? Yet not only that, but you also need to master magic and the 5 elemental attribute system. This sudden interruption made Daven feel displeased, but when he heard Julian mention a new cultivation system, his interest immediately surged. What attributes? Julian quickly adjusted his posture and explained seriously, attributes are the elements that humans discovered from within blessings based on them. They created power. In other words, these are artificial blessings. Hearing this, Daven couldn't hide the astonishment in his voice, which revealed his disbelief. What did you say? Humans can create blessings themselves. Doesn't that mean interfering with the power of the gods? Isn't such disrespect for the divine punished? Julian crossed his arms and tilted his chin towards Daven, sneering. What are you talking about? Even you don't respect the gods. Do you rest assured so far no one has been punished by the gods for this? Daven immediately thought of Revan, the one he had encountered during training. He asked curiously, so Revan also possesses an attribute, I heard you say. His attribute is Steel Human. What exactly is the Steel Human blessing? Julian nodded and slowly explained, the Steel Human blessing is one of the countless blessings that the Dwarf King possesses. Each blessing carries a unique attribute, granting the recipient specific powers. Not only that, but the more blessings they possess, the more opportunities they have to open new paths to become stronger. You can imagine it, like a large tree with many growing branches. The Steel Human blessing that Revan received was only mid-tier, mainly focused on defense and offense. Hearing these words, Daven's eyes lit up with interest, his voice full of excitement. It seems this is a rather new and interesting form of power. I never expected that after 500 years, martial artists could have developed to this level. Julian chuckled and patted Daven's shoulder. That is right. If you master this system, your strength will increase many times over. Daven recalled the scene of Revan swinging his wooden sword, slicing the training dummy in half. Just as Julian had described, the cut on that dummy was incredibly sharp and clean, completely unlike what a normal wooden sword could do. Revan displayed an astonishing ability. Unlike anyone in my era could that have been the power of an attribute. Daven's face gradually became serious to confront someone like that. I have to quickly familiarize myself with those skills as soon as possible. The next morning at the Aska family's training grounds, the sound of wooden swords clashing against straw dummies echoed continuously. It was Daven. He was diligently training without stopping. His left hand tightly gripped the sword, and he continuously swung with determined slashes. From afar, the Arenka family's servants gossiped, their tones full of mockery. Hey, it the young master again. Look at him, he said, using his left hand to swing the sword. How ridiculous, another carrying a pile of clothes replied indifferently. Just wait and see. He will get bored and give up soon enough, doesn't everyone know that? That's right, he can only swing a few times before he's exhausted, so weak. In the midst of their laughter, a strong voice suddenly rang out from a distance. Don't be disrespectful to the young master. Like that? The three turned their heads to look at the speaker. Oh, Vice Commander Merlin. The person who had appeared was a tall young man with a stern face. A long scar across his face made him look even more seasoned and resolute. It was Merlin, the Vice Commander of the White Sword Squad. Merlin swept his eyes over the three servants and said coldly, Is it that amusing to mock the young master of the Aska family while he is practicing his martial arts? Their faces paled and they hurriedly bowed their heads. We apologize, we will leave immediately with that. The three panicked and fled. Merlin turned his gaze towards Daven, who was panting after his relentless sword swings. Clearly, this training is consuming a lot of his physical strength. That's what I wanted to say. Merlin muttered, his eyes downcast. Look at him. Everyone calls him the disgrace of the Aranka family. Someone who only knows how to swing a sword aimlessly without possessing any attributes or mana he is always looked down upon. Julian, standing beside him, also looked towards Daven and said in a low voice, Hey, they were talking about you. Do you think we should go to the forest to train? Daven took a deep breath, his voice full of fatigue. Do you think we have enough time and energy to do that? Besides, I am used to being looked down upon by others. Old memories suddenly flooded back when he was Daven Nat Thu of the Samyeon family. Just because he was missing an arm, he was always scorned. Even his own parents didn't treat him like anything throughout his life. Everyone said that no matter how hard he tried, he could never defeat Kajin. Yet in the end, I did it with my own perseverance and effort. I defeated him. I once turned defeat into victory, and now, with this body, I have to try even harder. Lost in his thoughts, Daven suddenly noticed an arm reaching out in front of him, offering him a vial of medicine. This is mana recovery medicine. Young Master Daven was slightly stunned, not expecting anyone to care about him. Looking up, he recognized Merlin. Merlin said calmly, This will help you train more smoothly. Daven frowned, his voice full of suspicion. Who are you? Merlin smiled faintly. I am the vice commander of the White Sword Squad. Daven stared intently at him, his eyes full of vigilance. Are you mocking me? Merlin didn't deny it. He chuckled softly and replied frankly, To be honest, I thought so at first too. But your eyes, those eyes seem to be yearning for something, mocking a martial artist just because of their circumstances. That is what is truly despicable. Hearing these words, Daven nodded slightly, a sharp glint appearing in his eyes. Merlin, all right, I will remember this name. Then he hesitated slightly and continued, But shouldn't you be on patrol duty? Merlin laughed. That's why I'll go back to work now. Please excuse me. With that, he turned and left, leaving Daven standing there, his eyes slightly pensive. Daven didn't pay any more attention to Merlin. After using the mana recovery medicine, he quickly turned and continued training. Merlin watched Daven's retreating figure, pondering. It seems something has changed. The young master, hopefully luck will smile upon him, he thought to himself. Daven's training continued relentlessly. He continuously swung his sword, striking hard at the straw dummy, completely oblivious to the passing time. From morning to afternoon, and from afternoon to morning again, when he felt exhausted, he would take the remaining mana recovery medicine that Merlin had given him to recover faster. Not only did he tirelessly train all day, but even in the evening, Daven continued to record his insights. After each training session, it could be said that compared to ordinary people, he put in 3 or even 4 times the effort. Right foot firmly maintaining balance. Combining the twisting force from the hips, I can feel it now, mana in the chest. Finally, I am starting to feel it. It seemed that after days of arduous training, his efforts had paid off. He had begun to sense the flow of mana within his body. While training, Daven always imagined the dummy in front of him as Kajin. This very thing helped him progress at an astonishing speed. There was no denying that Kajin was the greatest motivation driving Daven to train relentlessly, so that one day he could defeat him. Left hand tightly gripping the hilt of the wooden sword, Daven began to swing, but this time, the sword strokes were no longer chaotic as before. Instead, he had gradually grasped a genuine sword technique. The sword path must follow the trajectory of starlight. Only then could its full power be unleashed. At that very moment, Daven seized the opportunity. The sword in his hand swiftly descended, a sharp slash, instantly tearing apart the straw dummy before him. Joy flashed in Daven's eyes. Success! I've mastered the swordsmanship. The scene shifted to Wilson. He was carrying a tray of food, preparing to bring it to Daven's room as he walked. He muttered unhappily, Damn it, how many days has it been, he says? Not a rooster, but he eats at 5:00 a.m. every day. His crazy training sessions only make things harder for me. In the midst of his annoyance, an idea suddenly flashed in Wilson's mind. Maybe I'll play a little prank on him. The scene shifted to Daven's room. Wilson finally brought breakfast, a fake smile on his face, and said loudly, Young master, your breakfast is here. Daven, looking eager, prepared to eat. But as soon as he opened the lid of the food tray, his face immediately darkened. Inside, it was completely empty. his gaze fixed on Wilson's mouth, where crumbs of food still clung. Wilson looked smug, as if provoking him. Daven said coldly, "If you want to sneak food, at least don't make it so obvious." Wilson still tried to act innocent, shrugging and saying, "What are you talking about? I don't know anything." Daven chuckled faintly, his eyes sharp. "Is that so? Next time, if you want to sneak food, at least wipe your mouth first." Hearing this, Wilson flinched and reflexively raised his hand to wipe his mouth. At this moment, Daven's voice deepened, carrying a sternness. "This time I can easily overlook it. But if it happens again," his eyes became as sharp as blades, "I advise you not to cross my limits." Wilson's face paled slightly, but he still tried to act tough. He smirked, his tone full of challenge. "Young master, I used to be a criminal. Don't just look at me like this. I've killed quite a few people, LOL. Daven remained calm, a faint smile on his lips. "Hearing you say that I am so scared," Wilson, thinking that Daven was truly terrified of him, was about to raise his voice further, but before he could finish his sentence, a cold voice suddenly echoed in his mind, controlling others by threatening, "Do you think it's that simple?" Wilson suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. "You are too naive to threaten me. That's why I don't directly overwhelm you with power," Daven said calmly. Wilson immediately panicked. "This is telepathy, young master. You can use mana now. Since when did this happen?"